Yeah, these are the fun ones though. The ones, episodes where I haven't like met the person until episodes.
Yeah,
cool.
It's like you get that first date energy.
Yeah,
right off the bat.
Yeah, it's great. I don't have to worry. Like, have I said this to this guy before?
All your bullshit stories are like still fresh.
Yeah, exactly.
That's perfect. Yeah. I think that's a latent fear I have always, that I've told a story before.
Yeah.
And I've become the old man.
Yeah.
Who needs to have more life experiences.
Yeah.
Because you're just vampiring off of the old ones.
Yeah. That's what stand-up comedy is you just go around to different places and pretend like it's new things that you just thought of today.
I watched one of your clips today so I can kind of get an idea of what you like to do. And it was one from Sober and Kava, and you're like, people come back for the set, and they're like, is comedy fake?
Yeah.
I liked how you did a hierarchy of realness.
Yeah.
It's more real than movies, but less real than sports.
Yeah, I think that kind of sums it up. It's because people do get, actually in that room at Kava Bar, I've gone there and did the open mic on Wednesdays. And then I went back. They were like, you should come back on Friday and do a comedy show. And I went back and I did the same jokes like you usually do. And they were just like, you already told us all of this. You're a fraud. And I was like, oh, okay. That's
really funny.
This is
also what a hard place to do comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, if you wanted to roast the room, it'd be really easy at the Kava Bar.
Yeah.
But to be funny there, I think would be tough.
Yeah, I wrote some roast jokes for that play. I like to get up and be like, Kava Bar is my favorite homeless shelter in Asheville. It's an easy place to roast.
If you didn't have Google Maps, you could just sniff the air, and eventually you'd find the Kava Bar.
Yeah, they don't like it when you make fun of the mud water. I think you can go a little too far if you start being like, "This is the biggest scam of all time."
Making fun of kava?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
That's dude. Like they've given us feedback that you shouldn't shit on the kava.
Have you tried it?
Yeah, I actually kind of like it a little. I don't drink booze anymore. I don't drink booze anymore, and I really liked booze. So now, like, kava is like almost like whiskey, where it's like, ugh, like I kind of want that.
Oh wow.
Like I want the bad numb.
Yeah, you got used to whiskey. Now you need something harder.
Yeah.
What's ironic though is that kava is bad for your liver.
Is it?
Yeah, I mean you probably have to drink like pretty regularly.
Well, that's good. So it counts as fucking you up. That's
I know. It's like if that's what your liver was missing, then it's perfect.
Yeah, that was the whole point of drinking all those years is to beat the shit out of my liver.
My first time, they gave me like I just took it raw, just no condom.
Yeah.
And they gave
pineapple
me
condom.
They gave me fucking Capri Sun as a chaser. Like, it is the most offensive liquid on earth, I think kava is. I mean, it tastes like a tree's asshole.
And I get no buzz from it either.
That's being generous. You didn't get anything?
No, nothing.
Okay.
But I have a very high tolerance for things.
Okay. I felt pretty mellow.
Yeah?
I felt mellow. It was nice. I was more social. But they give you a Capri Sun to chase it. Dude, it's like a whisper of flavor. I mean, like, LaCroix would be the only worse option.
Yeah.
It was nothing.
I love the place. I love the Kava Bar energy. Like the recovery poetry energy. I do enjoy it. Like that set that I clipped that reel from, like you can just get up there, you can do this there. Like this is like we just talk about whatever. It doesn't have to be funny. Whereas at most comedy shows you have to like make them laugh every 10, 20 seconds. But the Kava Bar, they're just like, just tell us about you, man. Like,
yeah, they're like
it's cool.
Yeah. I wonder sometimes if they're too accepting of an environment in the Kava Bar.
You get that false confidence. You're like, oh, I crushed the Kava Bar. Now I'll go to...
It's a devouring mother, yeah. I have seen atrocities in Asheville I could not have imagined in Dallas. I'm from Dallas.
Okay.
Texas. And I have been victimized at Asheville open mics by performances. There was once at One World Brewing Underground downtown.
I know that one, yeah.
Really great space.
Monday mic?
Kind of spooky, yeah, I think so. And there was a gentleman who did open mic. And I think, he nothing planned. He started with like one or two jokes, and they're 15-minute sets. And it ended up being the joke was that we all had to sit there for 15 minutes.
That's not good.
At one point, he devolved to pulling a candy wrapper out of his pocket and crinkling it into the mic saying, ASMR, 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 ASMR. The whole time I was looking to the host, just begging, please put us out of our misery.
I've done that, Mike, with the Monday.
He had too much love in his heart.
Yeah, it's late and it's weird. 15 is too long. I mean, 15 is like...
For a comedian?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
like,
that's tough.
You start with like 4 or 5, and that, if you're not, when that can feel like an eternity, you know, 4 or 5 of someone just to 15. I mean, closing with the crinkle.
Dude, especially with like a few people in the room. For a musician, 15 is perfect. It gives you 3 songs.
Right. Yeah.
It gives you 3 songs.
Yeah.
You might want like one more if you're feeling it, but for comedian, 15 is tough.
You hit those 5-minute marks with the songs. I always find it hard to make it past. If it's just me alone, around 2.5, I start to go.
Yeah, with the songs it's super easy because you have downtime. You have no instrumentals in comedy.
Yeah,
you know
that's true.
You can like play an intro, play an outro on a guitar.
There's no like hot licks.
What would be a comedy? What would be a comedy instrumental?
Like a crowd work section, maybe. I don't know.
Like physical comedy.
Yeah,
you know, you could like do a little shuffle or a dance or something.
That's when you do your crinkling the rapper thing.
Yeah,
always. And then you find out that it doesn't count.
Always keep a rapper in your pocket just in case you need an exit.
Yeah, so do you do the mics?
Yeah,
the mics. Yeah.
I've done open mics for a while around Asheville.
Yeah,
I like Haywood's. I like the Cavas, Elevated and Sovereign, both good. I do love like always a sound system, almost always a sound guy, like someone really attentive. I really love that about the Asheville mics.
Yeah, there's somebody there that's actually like listening.
Yeah,
there's one person listening at least.
Yeah, and the acceptance is nice.
Yeah,
I feel like I could light dog shit on fire, and they'd be like, "Wow, what a great expression."
Yeah, right before
vulnerability.
Yeah, they do. They go for the art here, which is nice. Like that's like our comedy scene is really like performance already weird like that too. And then you'll go to like Knoxville or some, Tri-Cities, Tennessee, and you'll be like, "Here's my weird artsy shit," and they're like it's you can forget how odd it is here. I mean, I like it, but it is different.
And odd is a great way to say it. I remember when I first moved here, I took a job with Amazon driving around, so I got to see all the neighborhoods. And like driving outside of the city of Asheville and then driving into the city of Asheville. Oh my God.
Night and day,
dude.
Pre-apocalypse, post-apocalypse.
And everyone communicates through their bumper stickers and their flags.
Yeah.
And they're wildly different in the suburbs than they are in the downtown center.
Yeah, that's
really funny.
That's what I liked about the hurricane is that like I feel like the two worlds kind of merged. Like Netflix is always like, watch a show about how Asheville and outside of Asheville are going to murder each other as soon as there's no electricity or water. But then it was like people actually helped each other. Like that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
I liked that. I was like, maybe we're going to make it. Like we're not going to cannibalize ourselves in the next few years. Maybe.
I remember standing in the grocery line at Harris Teeter really early on, and it was like 4 hours. We were waiting just to get like water and food. And I remember being in the line like, I think I'm the worst person in the line right now because everyone else was like laughing and like singing and dancing like they're Who's on Christmas Day.
Like the Grinch, like stop singing.
And I was there with a gun in my belt, like when are things gonna devolve?
I would like to wait for my water and the creepy silence, please.
I know. I was like, I'm the negative energy in the room.
Yeah,
which I was grateful for.
Yeah,
the people were so relaxed, even in the worst of it, in my experience.
Did your heart grow several times in size?
A little bit. Not enough.
Yeah. There's always more.
I was too wrapped up in fight or flight, I think.
Yeah.
For any positive growth. The only thing that grew was the bacteria on my body. It was so gross not showering for weeks at a time.
Yeah.
It was tough. My pores they grew 3 sizes that day.
Well, you look nice now.
I look like the surface of the moon. Using pool water to flush my toilet.
Yeah, we went down to the creek for that. It was nice. It was nice down there. Got to meet a lot of people. I liked it. It kind of overshadowed. Creekside. Yeah, exactly. Like right by your house. Yeah. It's a good water. Somebody put a hose in the creek.
Yeah.
And then there's like a siphon, so you could just, like, it was very convenient.
Brilliant.
It like,
we had someone like that in our complex in the pool.
Yeah.
They made a whole little system. And I was like, these skills have all of a sudden become very valuable.
Yeah, I know. I realized how unprepared I am. I have like family and shit. I'm like, this is.
Yeah.
I sort of do jokes and music and like web development, but the apocalyptic skills, it's a different skill set. Like we had like an 1/8 tank of gas and they even said like, you should probably fill your gas tank up. I was like, I'm not going to get wet doing that. And it was like, we couldn't even leave. So it was I learned. So I have some more things now. I have radio and some batteries and things.
Yeah, you were a doomsday prepper before the hurricane, and afterwards you're like a community hero.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, hero's strong, but that's nice, something to strive towards. Like, I think I have decided that I would rather and just be kind of trusting of humanity now, and if that end up dying because of it later, that at least I was happy for a while, Whereas like being too much of a prepper is like, it doesn't seem like those folks are the happiest, Yeah, you're just like kind of hoping it ends because you have all the shit.
Well, I mean, if you have high social skills, like you would. Like, you can entertain people. It's a valuable skill in the apocalypse.
There's no internet now. You got to listen to a local hack.
It also like
you can't.
Yeah.
There's no Tom Segura's not here anymore.
The market.
The local artists. It's like, all right, we got to all start going to the open mics now.
Wow, how powerful you'd become instantly.
So how long have you been playing music?
A long time. I started in church as a kid.
Okay.
So I think I got my first guitar in like 5th grade.
Okay. Can I ask what decade are you in? Are you in your 20s? Or?
Yeah, I'm in my 20s, my late 20s. I'm 27.
Okay. Hell yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah, that age.
Yeah, my Saturn return. Boy, has she returned.
Yeah. So it was like choir or like what did you do in church?
So music? Like my heroes were always whoever was on stage with a guitar. And so like kind of worship leading. So the guy with the acoustic guitar singing was always my jam. Yeah. And so that's what I do now. Yeah. Yeah, so I started in like church bands playing like acoustic guitar, and I slowly worked my way up and eliminated my competition until I was the assistant to a worship leader for a while. I worked in a church.
Oh, hell yeah.
That was the height of my church music career. It's kind of funny. I went to a Bible college and got a degree in English before I left the church. But I spent my whole life developing that skill set. I was like, graduated from college, most ready to be a worship leader. Wow. And like least likely to be one.
Yeah. Qualified, but not gonna.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. 100%. I maxed my skills out in this very specific area. And then chose not to use them.
Seems like great life skills for anything though. Like, like you said, communication. Yeah. Just reading a room, knowing what people are interested in, trying to bring people together. You can, go anywhere.
Politics, avoiding egos, living within strict power structures. Dodging eternal damnation.
How's that going?
These are all powerful skills. I don't know. I'll let you know after the fact.
After you die?
Yeah. I'm dodging it right now.
Yeah. So far, so good. I haven't died yet. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
I haven't died once ever.
But I don't know that I've totally avoided hell.
I think it's here on Earth, being shitty. Prepping too much for the apocalypse, I
don't think I have to wait for death to find that one. I really like the 4 Agreements. Have you read that one?
Yeah.
It's a great little intro.
Great book. I mean, it's been a long time, but I remember loving it.
Kind of like an Eastern idea. It's really small and simple.
Simple, like always do your best. I remember that one. It's like if you got to sweep the floor.
Oh, interesting.
Sweep it good. Like
I don't think I remember any of the 4 Agreements.
Don't be like, I can't believe they're making me sweep the floor again.
Yeah.
Because then you're always going to be sweeping the floor if you have that attitude.
Yeah, they had a conception of hell as self-created. It's a place that you exist in here.
Right.
It's not a place you should run from. You're already there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. The hellfire and damnation was a very apt metaphor for how you will feel if you are not good. I mean, I don't know. I grew up in the church too. It was like a pretty hippie. It wasn't hippie, but it was like it wasn't hippie at all. But it was like just very we're Christians, but you can be Jewish or gay or whatever, Buddhist, and you can still go to heaven. So it wasn't like there was other churches next door. I grew up in Tennessee where it was
so non-denominational.
Yeah, it's Methodist. It was like a lot of
Methodist.
Yeah, so just Christianity light, but
the gay cousin of Christianity.
Yeah, exactly.
Methodist.
Yeah, it was cool though. I mean, I sang in a choir all through and didn't realize how helpful that would be later because I was in there with all these band nerds that really knew how to sing harmonies and shit. So it kind of I think it kind of seeped in there somehow.
Yeah, I see some music gear in here.
Oh yeah,
so you musical?
Yeah, sometime we should play. The music is the thing I've done the longest. I've been doing music since I was a teenager, for 30 years.
I did
the singer-songwriter thing for most of my time. So that's why one of the reasons I want to talk to you is that's still I've been doing comedy for a decade, but writing songs is still the thing that I probably consider myself to be the thing the most. you know. And I liked your songs.
You do the most?
Yeah,
or?
like if I were to label myself as like an artiste of some sort, you know,
be
like
songwriter.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And then since having kids and switching to comedy, now I've just gotten obsessed with drumming. I've always drummed a little bit for the last 3 years. I just really love supporting other people's, because I've judged drummers for 30 years. They're always doing all these fills, ruining your nice song. So I was like, I'll just be the drummer that just plays the beat.
Wow.
And like supports other people's.
Oh my God.
You know,
you're almost doing charity work.
Yeah.
By being a good drummer. You're wearing this shirt.
Yeah, like the tasteful drummers.
Just stay out of the way.
Yeah. So we should jam sometime.
Oh my God,
yeah. Come back again and we'll jam. I got all the stuff. I got a PA and
yeah, and you have a shed.
Which
is something you need to drum.
Yeah, it's
especially if you have people in your life you love.
I've waited my whole life.
Or at least don't hate.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. No, it's I'm 45 years old. This is like I've worked my whole life to have this shed, so we could do this, so we could do that. I mean, it's not lost on me.
Fucking dream. Dude.
Yeah, I don't even want to take them to a room. I've gigged a little bit. I don't want to carry it. I just come to my shed and we'll just jam. Like I don't even really want to sound check and be there for 8 hours and then load out at 2 a.m. anymore. I'm too.
Certainly not as a drummer.
Yeah, exactly.
No one helps.
Yeah, no one helps.
Fuck the drummer.
Yeah,
he sits on his ass all night.
I know.
I have a little studio space in my condo. So one of my rooms is just a studio, and I record drums like live, fucking acoustic drums.
Oh, nice.
So like I have to, I look out of my second floor window to see if my neighbors' cars are there.
Yeah.
And then I furiously try to get good takes before they come home.
I know exactly that. Yeah, I just got out here, so that's not as much of an issue. But they were in the house till about 6 months ago. So on your album, is it a greater than sign? This is greater.
Yeah, this is greater than that.
Yeah,
yeah.
Math whiz. You know? Is that you playing like live drums, or is that?
Yeah, that was a combination. So
did you do it yourself?
I do 100%ers now. So I have kind of 2 Spotify accounts. So I have Warren Weitner and Reverend Grey. Reverend Grey is like my indie rock stuff.
Yeah, we got to get into that.
Yeah, Warren Weitner is
we're building up to that.
Warren Weitner is kind of my producer tag. So I do production for other people now.
Okay.
And I love to work in different genres, and I can never decide, you know? And everyone wants you to brand and pick a lane.
Yeah.
I just won't. And so I'll just put my name on everything that I like to do. So I've done like hip hop and country and like electronic.
Oh, nice.
So that EP was the first thing I released in 2019. And it was recorded with my friend Logan Miller, who's fantastic. So we kind of co-produced it together. We played all the instruments. So the drums on that is actually a mix of sampled and live.
Okay, yeah, that's where I was going with it. I was like, these are like sample drums that feel pretty real, or it's like you played them live and you edited them so tight that they're very even.
Yeah,
and,
so it's a mix of both. All the snare is, it's been a while now. All the snare
sampled, right?
Well, we blended. So we record live snare.
Oh, wow.
But if you have like a nice crispy in there, we might put one with a little bit of low end.
Okay.
Too.
So you have some like trigger in the software that just adds a sample? Or?
No, I mean it's just by hand.
Ooh, okay.
I mean, so you get snare hits.
Oh, that's cool. Because the snare hits are not quantized. Then you're lining up the samples with what you.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
That's what you do.
That's what I couldn't put my finger on. I was like, it feels like both.
It is. It is both. And then like cymbals, we did a blend. Like you can pay for nicer samples for beautiful cymbals and do that. And so a lot of the cymbals, I think we did samples for. The kick was sampled. Yeah, but it was definitely a mix because there's like drum parts that we can't, like rolls and stuff, you can't get like great samples for, like quantized.
Right.
Really hard to find one that works.
Yeah, you can't have it like it.
Yeah. Same thing for like violin. Like like violin's a really hard one to recreate digitally.
Fretless
for like
free.
For like drawn out like kind of stuff, it's fine. But like staccato, you can tell. Same thing on drums. It's like when it's quick like that, like single hits are fine. Like a you can do the Jay Dilla thing and make the
Jay Dilla.
You can make
the
samples off time so it feels like a live drummer.
Yeah. And
you can do that kind of stuff. But like it's really hard to do when you start getting into like when you need specified hits.
Yeah.
Like rolls and things.
That's cool you mentioned Jay Dilla because I listen to like almost all just ambient instrumental music now, or
really
mostly because I code for a living and I'm on a computer, so if they're singing it pulls me away from it. So
gotcha.
I just end up Spotify's like, this is what you listen to this year the most, and Jay Dilla is like, it's really interesting because he uses machines but makes them sound human. Like I heard this podcast about him where they said, he would get like those cheesy drum machines from the 80s and they have a swing on it where it's like, it's a swing it's a machine swing. But then he figured out if you hook up multiple machines together and each one has their own like cheesy Casio swing, if you get 4 of them together, then it starts to feel like Jay Dilla, because it's kind of like the old like jazz guys where you want each person to have its own different swing, whereas if you do them all on the same machine, that it'll like be the same. Does that make sense?
I mean, human brains are like pattern recognition software, and like we know when something's up like that. Like we always do. You would figure it out. But so would they do like one hit on one machine, like the kick ascribed to one machine and the hats ascribed to another machine?
Yeah,
Is
probably
that how
something like that. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, or just maybe getting like different rhythms going.
4 takes and just comp one from each.
Yeah,
and then choose, and that would sound like it was different. Wow, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, like I kind of just grasped like a piece of the concept, but I was like, oh, okay, so I haven't done that much. I usually play things live, but I have gotten more into like manipulating the takes, like cutting them and stuff. So I do like the space where there's a human doing stuff, but then why not use digital editing to like get your vision exactly the way you want?
Yeah. So like my Reverend Grey stuff is kind of unconventional production because I'm not a purist at all, and I'm also doing 100%er, so I'm playing every instrument.
What's 100%er?
Literally top to bottom, every job done by the same person.
Okay.
So it's like every instrument, all the writing, all the performance, but then also all the engineering.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm doing EQ and compression and like,
dude, I'm the same way.
I'm doing the master track at the end by myself, which is probably something I shouldn't be doing.
Mastering is always but it's like the whole thing's free and now I gotta give some dude like
it's a specialist job. Yeah, mixing is usually a little more expensive because it's time consuming. Mastering is usually pretty cheap.
Really?
The problem is that like if you have a good enough mix, you almost don't need a master.
Yeah.
It's like the master should be the last like maybe 5% of work. It should be very minimal.
Yeah.
So that's why you pay your mixing engineer more than your mastering. It takes longer.
Yeah. That's interesting. 100%er?
100%er, yeah.
100%er, yeah. It's like
John Bellion's kind of famous for doing them.
Yeah, I mean,
not anymore probably.
My favorite artists are like my favorite filmmakers. The only movies I want to watch are by writer directors. Like I do not, if it's like a whole room of people and they're like, well, that's gonna offend, and we all like compromise, and you get like every Hollywood predictable bullshit movie. But like Richard Linklater, Spike Lee, Quentin Tarantino, the guys that like, or the people who. It's just you can feel that there's a one voice all the way through. It's so much harder, but I feel like that really cuts through in today's watered down. We all compromised to make everyone happy kind of art.
It's interesting.
I think it's worth the suffering of like doing it all yourself, just going crazy,
suffering,
just going manic in your cave, like till you don't even know what a snare should sound like anymore.
So it's something I'm coming to realize is I understand the business a little better. So like if you look at a Beyonce song, a lot of times there's like 30 fucking co-writers.
Yeah.
Same thing with a lot of like new country and stuff. The country's famous for collaborations and writing rooms. And so you'll have 10 people on a song who had varying degrees of contribution. And it's just a different thing I'm realizing. It's like if you want an epic production, if that's what you want to go for, like, like a James Bay kind of thing. Sorry, is that the one who did Transformers, Michael Bay?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that sounds right. James
Bay's brother, Michael Bay. If you want something like that, like a huge production, if you want to build a cathedral, of art, you need a lot of people with specialized skills doing it. But like the thing I've been doing, I don't know if I'll do it forever, is like this is just one person's fucked up, skewed version of every process in the art, which makes a totally different thing.
Yeah.
And to me, that's been really fun and really interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll always do that.
Yeah.
I love collaboration. And
and
eventually, like to grow a business, typically you need to specialize and do just what you do best and outsource everything else. But doing it all yourself creates a really interesting product.
Yeah.
Like for better or for worse, like the mistakes and the things that you do really well, especially your mistakes though, I think become your style.
Oh yeah. The mistakes are absolutely, it's my favorite thing for this podcast is like when you record something and you listen back and you go, there's that one part, give it a few days. Do not fix it immediately, because for me, that'll be my favorite thing. Like the blemish, the beauty mark will be the thing that I love later.
Other people, it's like what makes you endearing to people is the stuff that like maybe technically is wrong.
Yeah, but it's human.
Yeah, and people love that.
Because everything is quantized and perfect. Like to make a perfect sounding song is so easy now. It no longer requires a lot of skill.
But humans react to it really poorly. I mean, there's like a disgusting sort of thing whenever you like MIDI beats that are just perfectly quantized. I mean, after 10 seconds of that, your brain is just like, fuck this. It just becomes noise, like worse than noise, because it's perfect. I mean, it's almost sinister. It's like someone's controlling it. It's kind of how it feels.
Yeah. No, I would agree with all that.
So one of my Bon Iver is probably my favorite artist of all time.
Yeah.
And he famously recorded For Emma Forever Ago, the album In the Woods, after his band breakup, and that's where Skinny Love comes from. Yeah. But he had really limited like gear with him. He took like a very limited recording software and stuff, and just a few mics and a couple guitars in his like dad's hunting cabin. But like that sound like inspired a decade of like indie rock afterwards.
All of a sudden, everybody's like in a falsetto, like the 5 years after Bon Iver.
And like
everybody's
like, when you listen to the guitars and stuff, they're like fucked. Like they're not in time.
Yeah.
The acoustics are playing different things.
Yeah.
Or the same thing, but a little bit behind, almost like poorly.
Yeah.
And it creates this dissonance, but somehow it works.
It takes a lot of confidence to put something out like that, because I think when you're doing it yourself, you're looking in the mirror, it can be like, oh, I'll just Photoshop that zit.
Like, this doesn't sound like John Mayer. Like, should I even put it out?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But it's those I love working with what you have.
Yeah, limitation is the key to making a lot of art, I think. Like endless choices. That's why I like to mix like I go. I don't think I've done a track that's exceeded 10 tracks in forever. It's like the drums are 2, sometimes 1, and you just kind of layer it on and you mix as you go, because I was in those sessions earlier on where we did it all. Now we just got to mix it, and you're sitting in Pro Tools with 40 tracks, and there's like 2 different acoustic guitar microphones, and you're trying to and you just get lost in the endless decisions, and you lose sight of what like the Stones records from the 60s. They'd be like, we've got the studio for the day, so we got to cut our album, we'll do half of it, the A side during like the morning, and the beat, like they would just go in and just do it, and it sounds so human and amazing. And then in the 80s, the Stones are like spending months, every like drum has an individual mic on it. And it's like, it doesn't sound like the Stones anymore. I know.
It's a choice, though. It's like, if that's the thing that you do is the perfect mic placement, then, do it to the best of your ability.
Yeah. And I think I'm sort of ADHD, whereas I just know that I have to build it with limitation. Like you said, like Jack White was someone big for me when he came out, like the White Stripes, like, that really validated I was like, I knew you could do it this way. Just like
Black Keys like famously recorded an album with I think just an SM57.
That first one,
like $100 Shure mic that everyone.
And they never sounded that good with those pristine whistles and stuff. I mean, I think the first one is because it sounds like the blues.
There's character to it.
Yeah.
Sometimes things only a mother can love is right.
Yeah. So you did like the church stuff for a while. When did you start like getting into?
You mean having sex? Yeah, about 20.
Oh yeah. Was that when it?
No, I mean it was a lot of things, and
you
then
had to choose between sex and your church.
No, not really. At least not formally. I never signed that contract. No, it was a lot of things.
Was it a strict, like, did you go to like a stricter church?
Oh, big time. Yeah.
Like, was it Baptist or something?
It was Pentecostal.
Okay.
So, but not the long hair skirt wearing Pentecostal, but still the like speaking in tongues kind of gifts of the Spirit Pentecostal.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But like church services looked like a rock concert. The band was great.
Yeah.
Like live music. Pastor, not too hellfire and brimstone. It's like the son of a hellfire and brimstone pastor.
The next
so
tier.
Just a little more moderate. Yeah, the next version. A little sleeker. Just a little brimstone.
Yeah.
A little less hellfire. That's what I grew up in and eventually worked in. And I mean, until about 20 is when I left the church. And and previously I was working in the church, going to a Bible school.
Did that involve like severing ties with family and stuff like that, or has it been amiable?
I didn't have to, but I did for a little bit.
Yeah. Because I know some people have that chip on. Like, I'm thankful that my church, I never had to choose being like a weird artist, and like if you walk out that door,
and I don't know, they never said that I'd be kicked out if I didn't live the way they all were living. Mm-hmm. That is the implicit understanding that I had, though.
Yeah,
I mean, I grew up and I saw what happened to people who misstepped. And it was always like mandatory counseling and like what they would call accountability, which isn't on the outset necessarily a bad thing to have a mentor in your life you're accountable to.
Yeah. But it should be, at some point, it should be the ideals that you have come up with for yourself to some degree, not someone else's dogma.
Yeah, well,
so there's that too.
Yeah. Coming up with your own ideals is not a popular idea. In mainline Protestant theology,
and I sort of get that too. That's not the way I live, but I sort of get that. Like, hey, we've had these rules for thousands of years for a reason, and they've kind of worked, or so I kind of get like, I don't feel like everyone has to be progressive. Mm-hmm. I don't even like that word progressive, but like I have a lot of tolerance and love for like, I'm glad that the Amish are out there. I'm not doing it, but like it's cool.
Sure,
but I don't know. I imagine it could be hard if that's where you're from and you have to be like, I know I got to follow my path. So now it's going to be weird with these folks who I love.
Yeah. Following my path was never something that I was conscious of. Mm-hmm. Like, it's kind of funny. I didn't even listen to secular music until like my sophomore year of high school because I was taught that like what you let in is what's going to come out. And if you let in an influence, like bad music.
What was the one? What was the first one that got in there? It was secular.
The most moderate stuff. You can't start with death grips. You have to like work into heretical blasphemy.
So this would have been like the aughts?
I started with like Lumineers.
Oh yeah.
And like Of Monsters and Men was like the stuff.
Oh yeah.
And what's so funny is that
that's good stuff.
Yeah, I love it still. I mean, I still
the
like
first Lumineers album.
Indie rock.
I mean, that's just
amazing.
I mean, that's what I liked about your music. I'm like, the singer-songwriter thing, it's just so hard to like it because it's just done so much. But then when you hear somebody like, it could still be good.
Wow.
With the you got the heart on your sleeve, simplicity thing.
Yeah, sincerity but not gross.
Yeah,
there's a little humor there. That's what I started listening to, and even then, like, Spotify used to have like a social aspect where you could kind of see what your friends were listening to.
Yeah, that bit me before.
Which was kind of interesting. But my friend had seen what I was listening to and talked to me about it at church and was like, whoa. I saw you were listening to Of Monsters and Men, and like, is everything okay?
And that's just like pretty wholesome music.
So I mean, it's like ambient indie folk.
Yeah. Also, that's good. I got like really into like Arcade Fire in the 2000s. There's a few albums I've listened to like burnt into my soul, and to me, they kind of felt like they were maybe following that, that just super intense, like almost gothic, like naked. Like Monsters of Men, I don't know them that well, but they're like, it's like a big sound, right? They have like a male and female voice, and it's like epic, kind of like rip your soul out, but like anthemic. Like, I love that stuff. Just I love being in the room for stuff like that. That actually does feel like my church was actually sounds a lot more boring than your church because it was like science is fine and brr, brr, brr. I almost think a kind of a more like extreme church would be more like a concert like that where you're like, holy shit, like,
it's holy
this room
shit
is
all
nuts.
The time. Yeah,
I mean, that sounds kind of cool.
I mean, I grew up in it, and so like my standard of what was normal was much different. But even for me, growing up with people like speaking in tongues around me, and like people who believed in miracles and things happening like that, and like people would be filled with the Spirit and they would run around the church, or they'd be like shaking, or like a pastor would touch their head and they would dolphin dive backwards.
I mean, part of me is like, that sounds like you're a kid and you're going, there is magic in the world, like
100%.
It's almost like you kind of have like
100%.
Like,
but it's like the magician doing all of this will also kill me forever in a very painful and personal way.
Wait, who? God?
Should I not be on his side? Yeah.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah, like God is sort of like, can be sort of aggressive. I don't want to say dickhead, but it's like God's sort of can be like a vengeful.
God is an abusive boyfriend with a gun to your head.
Yeah.
And it's love me
seem great.
Or I don't want to. I gave you this way out, but I will.
Yeah, that's a problem because God's not really like that. But it's the people between you and God, and you're a kid, and they're going, God's like that. He's got the gun. It's like, can't we just run around and
Yeah.
do all the fun? Can't we make this a music festival, but not have the gun?
Yeah. In modernity, they don't like to say the hellfire portion of the equation.
Yeah.
It's more like
Implied.
You've done bad, you deserve death forever, but God made a way for you to get out. And they go really quick to that. Jesus loves you.
You can still fix this.
Provided
you can still fix this. Yeah. All you have to do is exactly what we say.
You deserve death, but guess what? There's good news.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever heard it called the good news, but the good news is that there's a way out of hell.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting because I think there's any degree of baggage with wherever you came from. And it's almost like if maybe things are like too stable and perfect and everything's validated and you can be whatever you want. Like, I don't know if you can have to bust out of that and find you can almost, I don't know. It sounds kind of, I don't know. It sounds complicated.
People don't thrive in either.
But I like that magic is alive. That sounds cool. Because like kids need to believe in magic. You know, we all need to believe in magic.
100%.
You go into some place where there's magic every week?
Yeah.
And then, you know, I mean, you just, you know, they feel like you're going to go to hell. So that's not great. But
too much structure and too little structure are both equally damaging. Like too many options and not enough are both constrictive. They're paralyzing. I
always lean towards too few, you know, when possible. But maybe not with that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, I don't know. That's tricky. So so in like 10th grade, you started getting into like kind of finding your own. Was it the music that maybe kind of led you to like?
Oh, so that's what I was talking about. Is I had no sense of personal taste. I had no taste at all. Like I didn't know what I liked in like clothing. Like I didn't know what I wanted to wear or what I wanted to listen to musically.
Yeah.
It was always like there was a set number of things to choose from, and this is how you should feel. It's always how I was told. You know, like how I should feel about life. Like I shouldn't be sad because I know that God loves me. But it's like sometimes I am sad.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And like
yeah.
There was no sense of a personal voice. You know, it was always like the prayers I prayed as a kid was like, God, please conform my will to yours. And it's like, it's kind of funny. I've adopted a much more like Eastern view of a lot of things that have been, I guess, co-opted by the West. I mean, the Bible is an Eastern book. It's written by Hebrew men.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a Western perspective. We've taken
I thought it was a bunch of white Englishmen.
Yeah.
That,
yeah.
They were writing about white Jesus. I think it all took place in England, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The worst of it did. But it's an Eastern text, and it's written not to be logical, but kind of mystical.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the Bible through like a literal lens, I mean, it is fucked 10 ways, you know, especially if you go through like the old, it's too easy to pick apart. Like going through the Old Testament, you see like a vengeful God. But like if you look at biblical stories and don't need them to be literal, and that you can find nuggets and metaphorical truth in all of them, it's amazing. Like the story of Job.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Job's
trials? With the yeah, I think that is it. The one with he's connected with Joseph and the Technicolor coat. It's like that family.
Job was the sufferer. So Job was like Satan came to God and was like kind of made a wager. He's like, I bet I can make your servant.
Oh yes.
Deny you essentially. And God is like, no, I'll let you do whatever you want to Job.
Satan's like, if I torture your friend, he won't still worship you. God's like, go ahead, torture him. Take everything, ruin him. And then Job's like at the ground, still being like it was still worth it. I still love God.
Though he slay me, yet will I serve him.
Yeah.
Is Job's quote. But his kids die. His cattle are slaughtered.
Yeah.
And he loses everything. He gets twice as much in the end. So he gets all of his kids back plus double.
Yeah.
And like if you look at that literally, I mean, what a fucked up story.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at metaphorically, it's like Job continued to trust in the inherent goodness of life itself.
Yeah.
And wouldn't call it evil, wouldn't call his trials unjust, even though he knew he hadn't done anything wrong necessarily to deserve it. He still persisted in the belief of goodness itself.
Yeah.
And so he was rewarded with even more goodness.
Yeah.
You know? But if it's literal, if God was like, I bet you can't make Job deny me, would twist his dick. And like if like that's the truth, it's pretty fucked.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's like it is the guy that's like being the best worshiper of God, and Satan's like, can I torture this guy to test him? He's like, sure.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah. Pull out the ball.
And then it turns out Job's the real deal. You got to hand it to him. I mean, I think there is some good virtues in there. It's like, having an unshakable faith. I don't know if any of us could really be Job, but it's something you can hold in your mind during hard times in your life.
That's the point.
It's a model for you to be like, all right, I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to be an asshole today, which is like, that's, synonymous with
and when your wife
hanging
is
out with
nagging you, don't listen.
Yeah.
That's one of the morals of the story.
Yeah, that's interesting because I don't know if you're like there's this book called The Brothers Karamazov and that
Dostoevsky.
Yeah, so that's where I know that story from.
Oh, interesting.
It's like it's in there. There's a lot of like crazy, just Bible stories woven in, and I intend to read the Bible someday. I don't know if I'll get there, but like not just it's the oldest thing we have. Like I bet it would make my stand-up and music better. I bet it would make my brain better just to read it all.
I still think that portions of the biblical text should be required reading in schools, not from a religious standpoint, but because and this is kind of a hot take. It is the most referenced piece of literature to ever exist ever, and it's not even close.
Yeah,
I mean, in both art and music,
Agatha Christie miles behind.
In film, it's like
Michael Crichton. Yeah, sorry, buddy.
Like I think Shakespeare probably comes second in that list, if I'm correct. But even Shakespeare references the biblical text.
Yeah,
to not understand like the basic biblical stories, like robs you of like Western culture and what it's founded on.
Yeah,
which like you may not like lots of aspects of the Western culture, but historically what we have now that was founded on Judeo-Christian values is much kinder than history has ever existed ever.
Yeah,
and maybe some people feel like they've evolved past the need for the biblical text as their basis of morality.
Yeah,
and if that's the case, good for you. There's a lot of people in the world that could probably use some structure to their morality.
Oh, totally.
Because I believe in like a scaffolding of moral goods, and like there's some goods that are gooder than others, and I think some kind of moral structure is better than none at all.
Yeah, just going with like I feel like murdering this person and doing a bunch of drugs,
or your structure being power.
So I'll just do it.
Or like hedonism, just like personal whim isn't a great moral structure.
To have some model that you can look to when you're shaken or unsure.
Yeah, and if like you have as developed an intellect as like Richard Dawkins, and you can create some kind of humanistic morality beyond the biblical text.
I don't know who Richard
Good
Dawkins.
For you. He's like one of the 4 atheist horsemen.
Okay.
It's like really funny. It's like Christopher Hitchens, Sam Hunt.
Is he like a right now
Richard
guy,
Dawkins.
Or is he like back when he?
Dawkins is still alive.
Okay.
I mean, he's slowly grinding. He gets a little shorter every year. His bones are compressing. Yeah. Dawkins is still alive. He's a famous evolutionary biologist.
Yeah.
Still kicking.
But that was a lot of the stuff in Karamazov. I'm actually past halfway through it. It's going to take me a whole year to read. Mm-hmm. I'm a slow reader, but I love it. And one of the things in the book is like it's like the 19th century, and they're talking about how people are just leaving. They're like, we don't have a use for religion anymore. Mm-hmm. We got science now, and how that is not. We shouldn't just abandon it. Like it's basically he's describing exactly what we're all doing now with social media, just like this narcissism of you can have whatever you want, and that there still needs to be a place for church and religion. Like I don't take my kids to church, and I sometimes I don't. It was so boring. I don't want to go. I'm busy. But I do have fond memories, and I'm glad that I went. And I wouldn't want to live in a world without religion, even though I don't actively participate in it. I think that it's steadying. Like if we just all the churches were closed and we went from overnight to not having it, I think that would be very bad. I think that churches would be like, oh, kids get molested by priests. It's like, well, yeah, but they also give food and water to people, and it does kind of create in our consciousness more of a sense of like we're in it together,
I mean, they get molested by uncles too.
Yeah.
What are we going to do to get rid of uncles?
Right. Yeah. Like, no more uncles.
It's more widespread than you think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I just think that we evolve at such a fast rate socially now that we're so quick to throw out old ideas.
Yeah.
But like no matter how you feel about it, the conservative perspective is what provides safety for a society over time. And the progressive perspective is what leads to innovation.
Yes.
Like geniuses shock us throughout history and we're like, holy shit, we never thought of this. And it shows the world from a different angle we never would have thought of. But the progressive view was never meant to be in the majority. It was never meant to be vogue. Because if you have too much progress at once, evolution doesn't have time to select for the useful traits.
Yeah.
And so we just get all these fucking chaotic traits and we're all experimenting with these ideas at mass scale. I mean, that's the recipe for chaotic social unrest and dissolution of a society.
Yeah.
What you want is mostly traditional values and then a small group of people pushing the boundary.
Yeah.
But when everyone's pushing the boundary, I mean, that's like nuclear reactions for societal dynamics.
I totally agree. And it's interesting being, I'm a little older than the average Asheville comedian. And then I agree with everything you just said, whereas I'm in a community who I love, where it's a very progressive push the envelope. Like, you're still saying the word from 3 years ago. Get them out of here. It's like, whoa, guys, it's like we need to have the traditional too. Like, it's like, we're going to self-implode if we go all progressive. That's why I like getting out in the country around here and doing shows that aren't in Nashville, because I actually go, okay, sometimes I think everywhere is like Asheville, where it's just like, we have to change every pronoun tomorrow, and it's like, but
what's kind of funny is like that is the creative perspective, right? Like pushing the boundaries, but also high in compassion and creativity. Like that is the creative perspective, but that perspective was never meant to be in power. Like now they have this cudgel of popular opinion, and like media typically is how it's wielded now. And like social collusion, everyone can get together really quick and act against someone or something. And the creatives were never meant to have this power. The creatives were meant to fight the power. Yeah. But what's fucked now is they've become the power structure socially. Totally. And they don't know what to do with it. Yeah. Because they've never they've never had to wield power. They've always been the minority fighting the whole time. And it's really funny because like those aren't the people you want running things. Yeah. Those are the people you want as advisors that are like, I have this cool idea. What you want is a fucking nerd who looks at the data. Yeah. And runs your government like an accountant does.
Yes, yeah, totally.
And like this makes sense for people en masse. And then you have this freak on the side that's like, what if we tried this out? Yeah. And then you test the idea and see if it works.
Don't give that guy acid and have him start driving the bus. Yeah, and then we're all like, hey, where are we going? He's like, I don't know, but
why is everyone unhappy and anxious? Is it because things are changing at such a rapid rate that we can't keep up with them? Maybe so.
Yeah, I do like that. It's like nobody was like, let's make the Beatles the president or something. It's like,
and the Beatles recognized they weren't fucking role models. They're like, if you're getting your only political advice from us, you're fucked.
Yeah. And I think it takes away from your ability to be a progressive artist too. Like if the Beatles had to run the government, while their albums wouldn't have been as good. It's like, separate the concerns.
Like power is a necessary opponent to creativity. And it's like the Batman and Joker thing, in where like if you kill your opponent, there's nothing left to do. There's no fun, there's no game, there's no cat and mouse. Yeah. And it's like you want to beat your opponent, you want to be trying to win, but you want to be optimally challenged. Yeah. And when you win, the game is over and it's not fun anymore.
That's why you put them in that asylum that there's a breakout every few months,
Exactly.
Because we need to keep these ratings up.
That is the human condition. You want it to continue.
Yeah.
Yeah. If everything, this is kind of a funny critique of heaven, is it's like, it might have been Nietzsche. It was like if we did receive the Christian heaven, we would burn it down in a week just to experience something new. Yeah. You would fuck all the models, you would climb all the mountains, you would do every job you dreamed of, you would write every song, and you would beg for death or pain or something interesting to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want eternal consciousness in this. I would like to have enough time and health to enjoy this one, but I don't.
We just want more. Yeah. And better. But then if we got that, we would also want a little more. A little better.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean,
so it's like
knowing you have enough is
realize that what you have is enough.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's my advice to everyone in Gaza. Just realize what you have is enough.
Yeah,
that'll solve it.
I mean, and it's like, it's a daily renewal because that's the thing is like, you know, when I was younger, I thought, oh, I figured that out now, so that's not going to bother me anymore. It's like, no, you have to keep, and that's where things like prayer, you know, I think are powerful. It's like, I've said this before on here, but you know, if you get up every morning and you like say like, thank you, I'm grateful for being alive, and I hope my neighbor gets better with his cancer or whatever, like you're going to have a better day and a better life if you have those intentions. So, you know, as soon as you start like shaming other people or, you know, forcing that on other people, then I have a problem with you. But I think a lot of those traditions are super valuable and good. And it's weird to be like, I've almost just being I moved here because I wanted to be in the cutting edge liberal progressive pace. That was 22 years ago. Mm-hmm. And now I'm kind of like getting older. I have a family. I'm like, yeah, but you know, tradition's good too. Like what you just said, mm-hmm. you know, that's kind of a more recent thing for me. Like you need both. You need tradition and progress. Yeah. And I like the way you put it with like progressive people don't need to be driving the bus on acid.
I think once they try it out and get a taste for it, they'll find that it's not even really what they want. Like it's not fun.
I'm in meetings all day. I haven't played my sitar in months. George Harrison, like at the prime minister's table. This sucks. And the old prime minister's like, actually, you like being in a band, so I'm not trading back. This is way better. Hanging out with George Martin, this is a much better deal for me.
I think
running the government's stressful.
The key is no one should get what they want, and that leads to a good life.
Yeah.
Because once you get it, the game's over.
Yeah, and that's kind of what the Bible and those Russian books are about in a way. I think that you have to. The suffering is. Like I think on your deathbed, if you have that moment, like the trials and the suffering really is like you're like, oh, that shit made my soul like,
dude. There's no way. Good. There's no way you're gonna be like, wow, I avoided a lot of pain.
Yeah.
I'm really satisfied by how much suffering I was able to sidestep.
Yeah, that is true. It's probably just the opposite. You're like, somebody like I need to experience some pain before I die.
It'll be like, what amazing challenges I got through. That's what you'll care about.
Yeah.
You know, how much like pain I was able to transmute into something good.
Yeah, like how I treated people when things were going very badly for me. That's the thing I look at. Like you said about standing in line, you know, I catch myself being like, just wanting to, you know, assert my entitled expectation of what things are too much.
Yeah, I think that's where like true morality is tested. You know, is when like it's not necessarily in your favor at the moment.
Yeah,
goodness for goodness sake.
Yeah, like in Pulp Fiction when Bruce Willis doubles back for Marcellus Wallace. You know. Do you know that movie?
I've seen it. I can't think of the scene though.
It's like you and your enemy that you were trying to kill are both like thrown in some dungeon, and you're getting and you get a chance to escape, and you're like he's just at the door, and he's like the person that was his nemesis. He's like, I can't let this guy.
This is with the gimp.
Yeah, he's like, so he goes back. You doubling back for your enemy. I feel like that's a morality on a low. This is this low like kind of dirty scene, but there's a high idea of morality in there.
Yeah. Identifying with the enemy and like seeing them as yourself. I mean, that is it, dude.
Yeah.
That like you are one and the same. I mean, you're two sides to the same coin.
Yeah.
You're just having different experiences of the same thing.
Yeah, and I don't know that like progressive, I hear that like that's in the Bible, that's in the old books, but I don't know that I hear that as much in progressive. In progressive modern therapy culture, which I'm really into, I hear like validate yourself. You should have, and it's like there is some of that, you know, thinking beyond yourself. Like I think it gets twisted when they're like, you got to do what God says now. But the idea is, it's a good idea.
Well, it's funny. It's like it's so funny. Especially in that particular culture, the way they view enemies is like you can be and do something so bad that whatever I respond with is moral. Like you can be so deplorable morally that it justifies any action I take against you.
Right.
And like a caricature of the idea is like punch a Nazi, right?
Yeah.
It's like someone can adhere to ideals that are so deplorable and disgusting that like they have removed themselves from the social contract and don't deserve any ounce of compassion whatsoever. But like, and I understand why someone might feel that way, especially about someone's ideas of being a Nazi. But at the same time, it is the punitive American culture of like, we'll punish them, that'll fix the problem. Like, I'll destroy my enemy by putting them in jail or punching them in the jaw at a protest.
Vanquished.
And then it's all over. When like the truth is those people need to be integrated into society in some kind of loving way, and that's what fixes that problem.
Yeah, I mean the Joker's in there. He knows the Riddler, Harley Quinn. Like they're starting to.
Yeah,
it's getting worse.
The Joker just needed to be loved.
I think it's funny that Batman, everyone he fights is fun. You know, like he's like. You know
what's
like,
funny?
It's always really like, hey, let's have a party. And Batman's like, my parents died a long time ago.
Now that I think about it, it's just an analog for the conservative liberal struggle. So like Batman is the black and white traditionalist views of like this is right and wrong, and the Joker is just a gay guy, well dressed, having the time of his life everywhere he goes, and it's the tradition versus the liberal progressive view. And one is bouncing around and pushing the boundaries, and Batman is bringing order, and then it breaks out again, and then Batman brings order.
Yeah.
And eventually Batman breaks his neck in the lover's lane. I don't know if you've seen that one where he kills the Joker.
No.
Oh, it's amazing. Joker kind of kills himself on Batman's hands to sort of frame him.
I guess you can just do that because it's like, well, you know, and then next year we'll reboot it, and it's like he's alive again.
Earth 2.
It
goes on and on.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and that's like a thing where it's like giving everybody what they wanted, but then I imagine watching the Joker's neck get broken, I'd be like, did I want this? I thought I did.
It's like it sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here?
Because like the traditionalists don't really want to win either. Like the conservative view doesn't necessarily want to destroy the progressive one.
Yeah.
It's like without that, you lose art. Like you lose the things that make life spicy and interesting.
Yeah.
So it's like the parent doesn't want to win out. They just want to provide the kid enough structure to succeed.
What if like you get more progressive stuff, the more like better your culture. I mean, not better, but like the more easy. No, that's not the right.
No, I see what you're saying.
Like, as soon as it goes back to the apocalypse, it's like, the conservatives are like, hey, we grow our food, we have guns,
exactly.
Like, we're doing good. We know we got a well, but then you get to the point where everyone's just like, why is my Uber driver not here yet? Like we're just like, and then you get that's kind of synonymous with this like.
So I get what you're saying, and it's experimentation without security. So like art, I think is best served. I mean, this is why historically you had sponsors for great artists, right? Like the artist could produce their best work.
The king would be like,
because someone would pay for them to live. And so they had no fear of what they were creating.
What's the job I want?
What, like sponsor or artist?
Somebody to pay for all. I don't have to have a real job, you know? Like,
and this is it. So like right now, an artist, like when I'm making a song, like it is sometimes difficult not to allow commercial interest to impact your decisions. Like, is this 30-second sound bit going to hit on TikTok or not? Like, is this going to be good for videos? Is a consideration artists make now.
Yeah.
And like, what would be nice is to never have to have that commercial thought ever and just say, what occurs to me as an interesting thing I'd like to see in the world, I'll make that.
Yeah.
And so like what you're saying is that like, when there is a safe structure and a net to fall back on is when you see the most productivity in artists. They feel safe to experiment.
Yeah.
But if all you have is experimentation with no structure underneath, all you have is chaos.
Yeah, it's like trapeze artists trying some new crazies. Like you gotta have a net down there, otherwise they're just all gonna
100%. And
splatter.
Like one needs the other. The traditional view needs the progressive to make life spicy.
Yeah.
But like the progressive view needs the traditionalist to provide security in a society where art can be valued over just getting your basic needs.
Yeah, I always feel like I'm in this place, like as I've watched the world get more polarized or our culture over my life, that I go out to the country and I'm like the gayest liberal they've ever seen, and then I go to the Odd on Tuesdays to do comedy, and I'm like conservative dad to them. You know, it's just like, when did we get so? Like, you're just saying anything on these lines, and people are like, you can see them calculating, like, which side? It's a binary thing. Which side are you on? It's like, both. I don't know. We need both. It's the yin and yang symbol. Like, how it's the simplest thing in the world that we need both. You have salt and pepper on the table. Both. It's kind of the theme of this podcast. Some of my favorite people to talk to are the non-categorizable, openly non-categorizable. You're not like non-categorizable inside, but you're like, I'm in Nashville. I better make sure I mention I'm angry about Trump winning like 1,000 times, so I virtue signal.
It's tough. It's so tough to interact with people who have no room for nuance or subtlety in your views. You know, like everyone wants you to check. Sure, everyone wants you to check party boxes, and I just I just can't. Group identity has become so important as opposed to like individual discovery and exploration of your views. It's just so much easier to say I identify with this group.
Yeah, I didn't research the candidates, so I'll just check all one teams.
Yeah,
you know.
And there's such a fear attached to it too that you'll lose your group identity if you don't identify with every idea within your group.
Well, yeah, and that's part of it too. Is like where do I belong? You know, it's kind of scary to be non-categorizable because you don't have a team.
I think that's like a big part of the death of both political parties. I mean, like neither one was happy with this election cycle. Like the Republicans were cursed to have Trump as their. They didn't want it for a long time, resisted it, and the Democrats they weren't happy.
They lost everything
with their decisions on the table either, and called it audible last minute. And I think a big part of it is that like people are waking up to the two-party system and being disgusted with having to check black or white.
Yeah.
Like, it's an inhuman thing to ask people to be one thing or the other. Everything exists in the gray. Everyone is like a shade of
we're getting into it now.
Yeah, as soon as he said yin yang, I was like, this is my cue.
I have to say, I liked your music. I listened to, This Is Greater Than That. I don't know how you say it.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, this is cool. Because it's nice to be excited, like want to hear, But then I saw the Reverend Grey thing. I was like, all right, now we should do the podcast together.
Mm-hmm.
Like this insane alter ego.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know if insane is the right word, but I don't know. Can you kind of speak to how long you've been being that guy?
100%. So it's kind of funny. We already covered the backstory. So I grew up in mainline, a Protestant denomination church, working in a church as a worship leader.
Mm-hmm.
I was burnt out, and I didn't really continue that part of the story, but I left the church. I went from Bible college and working in a church to just nothing. And I couldn't palate the idea of a spiritual idea. I was just so angry. I was sitting in church services. Everything the pastor said, I'd be like, and I was like, what good is this doing me? What good is this doing them for me being here? And so I just left. I cut it out of my life. I lost all my friends, disconnected with my family.
Ouch.
And my worldview, it's like the filter of reality I used ever since I could think was a biblical one, through the church is how I was taught to view the world. Lost all of that and just floated for a couple of years. And it was really dark and sad. And then one day, a friend of mine, a weird progressive artist friend of mine, encouraged me to pick up what was a Taoist devotional book. And that introduced me to the Tao Te Ching, which is the central text of Taoism.
Oh, hell yeah.
Which is not really a religion. They would not like that classification.
I've given a translation of that book to many people over the years as a gift. I love it.
It is a book of Chinese poetry, essentially. It gives you no prescription of how to live your life. It gives you some puzzles to kind of work out within yourself. But it introduces you to the idea of non-dualistic thought. So not thinking within extremes of black and white.
Yeah.
And so I started reading the Tao, and it just something inside of me related to the words on the page. It was like this, like I could like smell truth. Like it was just so obvious to me that like this is how the world really does work.
Yeah.
And so the Tao is very short. It's like 66 little poems, something like that. I read that, and it like awakened this new spiritual world to me that I could engage with spiritual ideas without feeling disgusted. It took all of the structure away, essentially, and gave me this really loose set of principles with which to engage the world. So the yin-yang symbol comes from Taoism, It's the white within black, the black within white, constantly in circulation.
Yeah.
It's a balanced life, essentially. And so Reverend Grey is, took me kind of years to figure out what I wanted to release music under, like an idea. And so Reverend is a joke to my Christian past, and Grey is a nod to my kind of Taoist present and future. So Reverend Grey, finding truth in the gray.
Yeah, I love it. It's interesting you mentioned Tao Te Ching because I think I was 20 and like I was kind of like been in college because my parents were like, you got to be in college. You got to just, and I was like, I don't even know what I'm trying to study, and they're like, just be in college. And then I went I made it overseas. I went to Scotland and kind of like busked and did a lot of, and finally got far enough away to like drop out of college and do my own thing. And I was staying in a hostel, and it was just like 8 guys with bunk beds. And like one morning, one of the guys just like, he handed me a copy of the Tao Te Ching, and he was like, we've just been kind of passing it around.
No way.
And I was like, I read it, and it just blew my mind. And I've given it to a lot of people. I come back to that book, but it just came along like just the right time. Like that's never happened to some random dudes. Like,
it's so rare.
Give this a go. And it was like the exact perfect time that I needed it. And it was like, even when I read it now, like it kind of fuzzes my brain out in a way that it like, you know, this binary computer way of thinking, and it does something I can't even really put words on, but it's the whole, the holding dichotomy or the opposites being true at the same time.
It disrupts the typical way you're taught to think.
Yeah,
which is in absolutes.
Yeah,
like the wise perspective in life is to figure out as much as you can about life, and that helps you move in the world financially, within your job, within relationships. Figure out as much as you can and how to fix it. And the Tao is sort of the opposite. It helps you to rectify mystery and chaos in your life and allow discomfort to be there and to not touch it. It's okay if I don't know.
Yeah.
And from that place, it seems like you find out way more. You start to learn more.
Yeah, there's some great passages in there about like, you know, people don't need to travel or own stuff. Like, you know,
so weird.
Because at that time I was like, I have to see it all. I have to get it all. And I'm like, yeah, you can.
That was hard for me to read.
Yeah,
it's like when the people are happy, they won't travel.
Yeah,
they'll be happy at home.
Yeah, you read that and you're just like, wait, what? That's kind of the. But then you're like, wait, yeah.
I need to travel to find myself.
Yeah.
But what's funny is like it makes room for that too, because it's like maybe you do.
Yeah.
But then you'll realize that you'd never needed to.
Yeah.
That like everything within you was already there.
The Alchemist, you know that one, the book? It's basically like a kid it's a fable where he goes on this long journey and then he just comes back, you know, where he started.
Exactly.
Kind of like every story, really.
Well, that's kind of the joke.
The hero's journey, and then you're back and you're like, oh, it was here all along, but 100%. I needed to have that conflict.
So like that's the joke. That's like a Taoist joke is like, how do you travel all the way around the world? Well, it's like you take a journey that will take you, you know, months, years of walking, right? Or you could just turn around.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what's funny is it's the same place,
yeah.
But you do have to take the journey all the way around because experience is the point of it. And you may consciously understand where you'll be in the future, but it won't be real to you until you live it out and have the experience. And that's where your belief changes.
Yeah, I wonder if people that would like, well, you know, if you'd stayed in the church, or I mean, we all have our own version of it. It's not, I'm not just putting it on you, but you know, making that decision to break out and have the hero's journey versus staying. Like, I wonder if you could still have that hero's journey by staying, or if you do kind of know deep in your heart that you kind of have like betrayed yourself by not. Like the journey is like you didn't actually need to physically go there, but you had to confront the things in yourself, you know?
Yeah.
I wonder if you can stay in a place, and it still kind of blows my mind because travel, I want to travel and see more of the world, but I also think that there can be a vanity in travel too, where it's like people are like, yeah, and then we went to Tokyo and it was, you know, like when people talk about their travels, it's like, yeah, not everybody can afford to just do all these fancy trips, you know? There could be.
I think you can go through the hero's journey wherever you are. I do think things like travel accelerate the process. They put you in a new state, which opens you up to new experiences and ideas.
Yeah.
At the same time, there's a danger in bastardizing and making the medicine common, if that makes sense. Which is like...
Let's slow that down.
Yeah. So you see it all the time now on social media, especially in like spiritualist content and circles, where... things like mushrooms or perhaps LSD these historically have kind of been like sacred ritualistic chemicals, and there's this deep danger in making the mystical common, and what would have been a medicine for you becomes a really deep curse.
Yeah, party drug, or even something too casual.
Exactly.
You're not doing it with intentionality. And
you almost inoculate yourself like a vaccine against the medicine.
Yeah.
You make it so the medicine doesn't work on you.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're fucked then.
Yeah.
You know, when you turn things that could be sacred and transformational into common and just pleasurable experiences.
That's what we've done with everything, right? That's just the world we live in now.
There's such a danger.
Like watching a movie used to be like, on Friday we're going to watch a film. Like it was like a special thing. Mm-hmm. Now it's just like, I'm standing in line. I'm getting it all the time.
Because when it all becomes normal to you like that, it's like, what's going to shock you out of your experience anymore?
Losing all of this. You have to go Job on it then. You need to...
I mean, that was Jesus' prescription to the rich young ruler. And he's like, Jesus, what do I have to do to become your servant, to follow you? He says, sell everything you own.
Yeah.
It's like, you know?
All of it? Like, gotta keep like one guitar?
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. Yeah. And loss and death is the gateway to transformational change. And that's the Jesus story. It's not one that someone else died for you. It's not this guy named Jesus, Son of God, died for you in the past to save you from a future of hell. It's you yourself need to die to your own sins, to your own desires. And then in that process, you will rise as something new and be a benefit to your community, but only after you've died to your own desires.
Yeah.
The problem is people cast it. They take no responsibility. They identify with the hero of the story and don't realize that it's meant to be them. It's meant to be the model of what they should do in their own lives.
You mean people who are like, yeah, I love having a hero around, instead of taking that upon themselves?
This is
transcend
an unpopular opinion, but they say, Jesus saved me, without realizing that they themselves are that Christ character. Yeah. Like the thing that's going to save you is you. And like you should be identifying with the hero's journey, not the hero himself. Like you are the hero of that story. At least you're meant to be. You're meant to experience the death yourself. You're not meant to call on the acts of another in the past. You're meant to die right now, every day. Yeah. And through those little deaths, you find new life.
The tiny ego deaths. That's another thing I love about comedy. It's just like the brutal, and Russian novels. Is there's humiliation as a gateway to transcendence. You know, like you bombing, like not being like, I want to make sure I look like I know what I'm doing. Yeah. There's the urge to do that, but it's through that you kind of, like in the books, there's usually the character suffers some brutal humiliation that's public and shameful, and that's really hard for a while, and then after that they come back, and it's kind of that Jesus metaphor.
That bombing feeling of humiliation in front of a crowd is a simulation of the feeling of death. I mean, it's the most human basic fear is that like they're going to hate me so much they'll take my life. Yeah. Or furthermore, I'll lose resources within my community. Yeah. People won't want to be around me because they'll see me as something bad. Yeah. I'm not going to get my food and my water.
Yeah, and that's in our DNA, I think. Like that and maybe some of us more than others, but yeah, that want for acceptance or approval. Mm-hmm. I think somewhere deep in my DNA there's a part of like a really old me that's like, if they don't laugh and like me, they're going to cast me out into the woods. I'm going to starve to death.
It's your lizard brain.
Yeah.
And what's fucked is that lizard brain is much older than the portions of you that experience consciousness. Yeah. Like that thing that's like, I need to fuck and fight and feed is much older and much more ingrained in both your body and your mind. Oh, yeah. Than anything else. I mean, it's one of the first things we had. Yeah. And it was necessary for a time. But again, it's like things develop and we develop with them. We leave behind those old behaviors. Yeah. That's what mindfulness meditation is it is normalization of the feeling of death. So that's why like you close your eyes and you're meant to allow thoughts to pass through you and not react to any emotion or any thought. You simply observe. Yeah. You become the observer of the experience. Yeah. Not the experiencer. And in that you normalize the feeling of death.
Yeah, I need to get back to that. I've been thinking, I've been meditating, but I'm good for like a while, and then I'll be like, oh, my life's going so well, I don't need my meditation anymore. Mm-hmm. I like how it's the same words. I almost said need my meds anymore. I was like, that's funny that meditation and med are like the same. Yeah. But yeah, it's people have been talking about transcendental meditation to me more recently, and to me, it doesn't sound as appealing as mindfulness meditation, because it's like, what, instead of trying to transcend it, you're trying to actually just be in it. You know what I mean? Like there's kind of an inherent suffering to just watching your brain as clearly as you can. It can be kind of painful. Like, do you meditate?
I do. Yeah.
Do you have like a daily practice, or how do you?
I do.
Yeah.
And it's typically a mindfulness practice.
Mm-hmm.
So my practice is silence. I mean, I don't use any words typically. I allow thoughts and feelings to arise, and I do my best to just watch them for as long as I can.
How do you do a timer, or do you just go till
10 minutes typically is how I start. Yeah.
That's a good amount of time.
I start my day. I'm going through, it's a workbook. It's called A Course in Miracles, that was one tangential rabbit hole after another. I was led there by a book called The Maps of Consciousness by David Hawkins, who recommended this course called A Course in Miracles. It's kind of a mystical, I don't understand it, so I couldn't explain it to you, but it's a 365-day, one a day, mystical set of practices that changes the way that you think at the end of it.
Oh, that's cool. That sounds like, I got into meditating through a book called Wherever You Go, There You Are.
Yeah.
And that's
John Kabat-Zinn.
Zen, yeah. So my older sister gave me that book, like, good Lord, like 25 years ago. And it was kind of like that. It's like each day you just read, be like a mountain, be like a tree, whatever. Loving kindness. And I'll come back to that. It's almost like a kind of a pseudo-religious type thing for me, where it's like, all right, my brain's a mess. I need to kind of, and just, it's so easy. You just read it, and then you just sit there in the morning and do it. He weaves in Thoreau and all kinds of, like, I got to know so many other things through that book.
He quotes Thoreau a lot.
Yeah. Which is cool, because like Thoreau's an American dude, so it was a great, like, it's like, this isn't necessarily just something from the other side of the world.
My favorite book is Walden by Henry David Thoreau.
Oh, really? Yeah. Is it a poem? Is it like I know excerpt, like the quotes, but I don't think I've ever actually got a copy of the book.
So the famous quotes are like, most men live lives of quiet desperation.
Yeah.
And he's talking about like a city life.
Yeah.
And so what he does is he goes a couple miles outside of his city and builds a home by Walden Pond. And the book is essentially a memoir of the couple of years that he spent there by Walden Pond.
Yeah.
And so it's like equal parts like a journal, scientific descriptions of things, and then poetic exploration of those things.
It's 19th century, right?
Yeah.
That's like all the it's like the Dostoevsky and the, like, there's something about that era is my favorite. Like, I think if I go back farther than that, it's like really hard. Like even Shakespeare, I'm just like, it's hard for my brain to understand this. But the 19th century was like right when you had all the
spot.
Yeah, right when the Industrial Revolution and stuff, is the people at that time were going, hey, like, we're starting to really leave behind some traditions that we've had. And that's it is a sweet spot. And the fact that I can go back and read something that was written in the 19th century and it like hits perfectly, I know it's real. Like, whatever I see on TikTok today, it might just be a fleeting 2024 thing that seems good. It's in our consciousness today. But if it was written like 150 years ago, and it like, you're like, boom.
That's what's interesting about universal truth, is it's universal no matter what time you live in. Yeah. And like, it addresses any circumstance you may find yourself in. Yeah. Because like, human history is so repeating. It's why we relate to that old art. It's why like Shakespeare's stories persist today. It's because he touched on some kind of human universal experience, just like the Jungian archetypes. Yeah. You know, they touch truth so closely that we can all relate to them no matter where you're at.
So is that something when you write songs and do stuff, are you striving for like a timelessness, or you talked about, you know, how you have to think like, what is the 30-second TikTok clip going to do for my career now that is kind of in there? Like, how do you think about that when you're making something? You're like, I'm just saying what I want to say. I don't really give a shit. Or are you kind of like, I mean, it is nice to have people enjoy your art too. I know. And I struggle with that. I'm like, is that a bad vein part of me that wants to have followers? I mean, even that word, it's like a Jesus word. Disciples.
Isn't that funny? Yeah. So I admire purists who just do something weird, and then like they're comfortable with the fact they may never be recognized and will die anonymously. Yeah. I respect that as an artist. Not really what I want for my life. And so I've never enjoyed, you can either have this or you can have this. I've always been like both. Like, give me the swirl.
The gray.
Give me the gray. And so to your point, like Reverend Grey, when I put something under that name, typically it's a little more high-minded than my other stuff. I love to reference like classic literature, high art, and like those kinds of philosophical sort of bents is my stuff under Reverend Grey. So that feels a little more focused of an expression for me. And that's why I also have the Warren Weitner Spotify where you found this, that, where I can do whatever I want, even if it is commercial. And so I've always loved the idea of being my own sponsor, like making art that sponsors me time and freedom to make other art.
Yeah.
That is just my pure expression.
Yeah.
And I found that like when I do that, even if I kind of have a commercial mind about it, like this is maybe a popular sounding thing, that like personal perspective always bleeds into it too, you know? Like I'm not just a robot, even if I'm making something that's a little more commercial. Like I still have that artistic perspective, even if the stuff I'm making is kind of popular sounding.
So what's your process like for coming up with a song? I mean, it's probably a little different every time, but do you like start by strumming the chords, or do you start with lyrics, or start by building beats and you build it in the studio, or like?
I'm kind of weird because I almost like collect different ways to make a song. And so I think it's so fun when I build a song in a way I never have before.
Right.
Like there's one under Reverend Grey called Let Me Out. And I've been trying like Twitch streaming for a while. I did it like for like a year with no real success. But I did one stream where I was doing like live music production on stream, essentially to myself. Later, I found out that the audio wasn't coming through. And so I was just silently like, oh, that's so cool on camera. But I came up with this loop on my like looping pedal, which I used to perform live. And it was really good. And so I happened to have my software open. And so I recorded the loop, and then I started adding some drums and stuff in. And live on stream, I made what became Let Me Out in the program. Like I essentially wrote the song in Ableton, the software that I use to record music. And I'd never done that before.
Like you wrote it in real time.
Purely digital, in real time, just in the computer.
Do you feel like I feel like when I look at my songs, like the more they just came out fast like that, the more I tend to like them, with exceptions. But the more I try to labor over something and get it right, the harder it is to get it right.
A lot of times my best stuff comes that way. Yeah. But like if you want to be a working artist in any way, you need access to that where it kind of comes through you, sort of receive it. But to be a working artist, you also need to develop kind of the discipline of making it a practice of recording and having some form.
The writer's room. It's like, we got SNL on Saturday, guys. You got to crank out some bits. Like, you can't just wait till you feel like it.
Having both makes you better as an artist.
Oh yeah.
The more you give, the more you get. That's how it works in art or jokes, anything. So like if you can be generous with what you're creating, the more you'll receive. It's just how it works. Yeah. Like the most prolific artists are the ones that just write generously.
Oh yeah.
Give to others. They let it go freely because they know it'll come back to them because they trust the source. They trust themselves.
Yeah, we're talking about all the books that I've read over and over again. So the other one I haven't mentioned is called Daily Rituals, and it's a book that's just it's like Hemingway and Chuck Close, all these different artists, in any medium, and it's like about 2 pages on each. So it's like 400 or so, hundreds of artists, and it's like their routines. Like at the beginning of the book, the quote is like, "Amateurs wait for inspiration. Pros sit down every day to write," and it's amazing how many like these artists that like put out these giant bodies of work over their life, which is what I'm interested in doing, is trying to make as much as I can. They get up more often than not. They get up in the morning and they go, every morning I write for 3 hours, or I write 2 pages a day, and I just get those 2 pages perfect. Well, at the end of the year, that's a novel, So it's like, the discipline of it. Whereas like, there's also the artist in me that's like, I want to go crazy and just like have it all be, what'd you say? Like it comes through you. But there's long dry spells.
If you have the discipline and the technique, when the inspiration comes, you have everything in place to capture it.
Yeah, you're in that athletic state where you've been running the reps and the drills. So when it comes, you're like ready. You're not like, where's my legal pad? Oh no.
Yeah. So to answer your question, my process changes all the time.
Yeah.
Typically, lyrics and music come at the same time. I'll usually write on acoustic guitar, but I like doing weird stuff. Like I'll try writing on a piano or something like that and taking it over. I've done it like 10 different ways throughout different songs that I've written and put out. And I think it's so fun when a song comes from a new medium, kind of.
A new medium, like a new instrument or something on the radio?
Could be, yeah. Like I could be playing in the software digitally or something like that. Or maybe like writing a poem first and then using that as a structure to bring to music later. Yeah. Or writing music first and being like, that's a catchy melody. What lyrics would fit in here?
Yeah, like we started off this conversation talking about how comedy is sometimes it's like, oh, I thought this was all extemporaneous and you've thought of this stuff before. Like there is this truth that like if you're crowd working or you're riffing in a room or you find something in the room, like people can feel that it's like a new thing and it's not something you've memorized before. And those songs that you find in a new way like that, I think they just get more of a bump from that. You know, I mean, you can still write a great song the way you've written before, but there's something just inherently like, I mean, godlike is not, I would never like, you know, compare myself to whatever the traditional version of God is, but I think the creator, you are being a creator, you know, you are giving birth to these things. And there's something kind of holy about that. Like when you find a new way to make a piece of art and like you're like, yes, it said what I wanted to say, but then you're like, yeah, I never made one like that before in that way.
Yeah. It's also humbling and it takes you out of the position of like it's funny you say creator because you are. And to some, when they find success in art, it makes them think that they are the God.
Yeah.
And it's almost like
slippery slope.
I might kind of agree with that in that like we're all a little universe and that we are creators of the life that we've been given. And we have so much power over what happens. But when things come to us as gifts, it provides the opposite perspective too.
Yeah.
Like positive humility.
Gratitude instead of arrogance.
And that like I'm also receiving this.
Yeah.
And that every day of life I've received. And maybe I've done well with it, but to some degree it's a combination of my interaction with the things I've been given.
Yeah.
And like that's the human life in kind of a positive way. But if you just have one or the other, if you're just like humble, like I'm a piece of shit, like, you know, I'm no good. Or if you're just like Kanye, I'm a god, no one can touch me.
Yeah.
It's an unbalanced life.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I like that.
So I like when, like you say, it comes to you because it is really humbling because you realize like you're a part of the process, but you're not everything. Yeah. By any means, you know.
And I feel, you know, the muse, like if you do make time, like I will never have a job that makes me like, if I get an idea for a song, I'm going to do the voice memo, whether I use it or not. Like I believe that if you listen to the muse, it's more likely to keep coming around. Mm-hmm. Whereas as you get older and you get more into like, how's the stock market doing? My kids' schools, and you can lose that. You're like, the muse is like give me an idea, but I'm going to spend my time on more practical things. I think it's so valuable. You get so much out of just following those creative impulses. Like I never expect this podcast to make me any money or, you know, get a bunch of views or anything, but I know I'm going to write jokes and songs a little different after this conversation. It's like, it's an exercise in creativity expanded in your mind. So I try to build things that way, but it is nice when people enjoy your art because you get to meet people. Like if you make a bunch of people laugh, they might invite you back and you might make some friends, you know? So yeah, I'm always looking for that, like commercial versus like just letting it come through me.
Yeah.
We embrace the tangents on here.
It's a difficult balance for everyone. And my favorite art is the stuff that captures some kind of weird, unique perspective, but is also well-liked. It's back to Bon Iver. It's part of why I love his stuff. Because he does truly experimental production techniques that should not work and sound egregious at times. But people love it. Even in that first album, even in Skinny Love. Bad. Almost in some ways, like technically you would call it bad in a recording studio, but it captures some piece of true human experience. I think that's why people like it when they see comedy unfold in the room. Yeah, and this is the work of artists, and like the progressive ideal is to be hypersensitive to truth, then to communicate that truth to the group. Like that's the job of the artist. And it's why we like suffer emotionally. Also why we feel inspired by pain. Some think they can't be happy and creative. But we are sensitive to everything. And in particular, we should be sensitive to truth, and then take that truth and communicate it to the group, and that's our value in the world.
You think truth is absolute, or you think it's subjective, like my truth, your truth?
I do think truth is absolute.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think there are universally true things that you can learn.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of like what I was talking about with the old books and stuff, and kind of why I want to read the Bible eventually. It's like, I think there probably are some truths in there, or as much as you could say it's true. I mean, it's like it's endured.
Well, see, this is what's funny and may provide like a little bit of distinction, is that I think there are things that are truer than others, right?
Truth is a spectrum like everything else.
I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, this is like, it gets a little complicated because most people want to be like, well, which one is right?
Yeah.
Which one should I follow?
Yeah. It's easier. Tell me. So I got things to do.
And it saves us a lot of brain power to do that. And it's why we check the party boxes and everything in our life, why we identify with groups.
Yeah.
Saves you brain power.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time, a lot of energy.
Yeah.
To like figure out what you think and what you really
being
believe.
100% is exhausting.
It is. Yeah.
As we know.
Yeah. You see the bags. But I do think there's like a scaffolding to truth as well. And like an idea that holds truth loosely, like the Tao Te Ching, I would say is pretty high.
Yeah.
And an ideal that says power rules over everything is pretty low.
Yeah.
But like, again, it's on a spectrum.
Yeah. And the Tao Te Ching thing that really just blew my mind and still does is this, the truth factor, but also the simplicity factor. Mm-hmm. When you can hit both, I think there's that simplicity is just is more likely to be like evident that it's true. Whereas those Russian novels, it's like I mean it's there's a lot you can. I think they're harder to read than the Tao Te Ching, but the Tao Te Ching is like, I mean, it's saying and heavy stuff, but it's written a child can understand.
It gets complicated talking about truth because I would call truest truth like silence. Yeah. And like it would be God, it would be unity. Yeah. Which is not, you can't look
words are lies. As soon as you start speaking words, it's like it's going to be a little bit of a lie.
This is absolutely.
And these words they don't mean exactly the same thing to you anay. So we're this is a jam where we're kind of trying to hit these intangible things. But yeah.
So you want to hear a $5 word?
Yeah.
So I heard this on a podcast many years ago called The Liturgists, and they talked about this idea about words and how close they can get to truth without touching them. Because words describe something, but they don't encapsulate it. They're useful for us to communicate about things, but they aren't the things themselves. They can't touch the things themselves. So words have asymptotic fidelity. So it's like on a chart, an asymptote is the graph that like keeps getting closer to zero but never touches. And so like 1 divided by 2 divided by 2 divided by 2 gets smaller, but it's never going to touch zero. It's just going to keep getting smaller.
Getting some mathematics in there. Love it.
So the more words you use, the closer you get to truth or describing the idea. Like this is a carpet. I can describe its color, what its weight is, its fabric and things. And I'll get closer to the truth of what it is, but I'll never quite touch it with words.
It's like approaching zero or approaching infinity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Asymptotic fidelity. Yeah. And so like you can't touch truth with words, but you can kind of point in the direction. Yeah. And to your point, that's why simplicity is so beautiful, is because like the first line of the Tao Te Ching says that like the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. Yeah. And you can substitute that for truth or what have you, God. You know, the truth that can be spoken is not the eternal truth. It's not the realist truth. It's like we can point you there, but you have to experience truth yourself.
And you got translation in there too, because the version that I was given, to read is the version I've given people is I forget who did the translation, but I found another translation later and it was like very rigid and hard to read. And I was like, whoa, it was an older one where like, this was the more like modern light. And it was
interesting.
I was like, wow, I'm glad I didn't get this one handed it to me, because I probably would have been like, this is hard. Like I wouldn't have made it past the first one. So
I really love the Stephen Mitchell translation.
Yeah, I think that's the one.
It has that Go game on the front, the black and white pieces of that game. I think it's called Go.
See, in the intro, does he write like, my goal has been to keep it like the play, the symbol and the play and the child.
As true to the feeling. This is the problem with like biblical translation too. Like some translations are true to the feeling of the text. Yeah. Other translations are true to the literal meaning of the Hebrew words of the text.
And the Russian stuff too. It's like, it's not.
It's the problem with law is like some judges interpret law to the letter of the law. Yeah. Like this is what the words say as best as we know what the words mean. But some judges interpret the law as this is the truth of the law that it's trying to communicate.
Yeah.
And this is the principle, whether it's been violated or not.
And that is, interpretation is its own. You into covers? You play covers? I don't think I've
play
seen
cover songs. Yeah.
Like when I started, I always try to learn them the way they were, but now I've just gotten more into. There's this Cat Power album that came out from a million years ago, where she did all the covers. Like, it's not even the same melody or chords progression, and I was just like, whoa, like this is actually like. I think there's a value in learning a song the way it is, but reinterpretation can be such a powerful thing.
It's reharmonized.
Yeah.
Well, like if you look at classical music, like you'll have the composer, and it's like Claude Debussy, right? Mm-hmm. And he wrote a beautiful piano sonata or something, and then it will show you the person who's playing it that you're hearing.
Yeah.
And like real big classical fans will have their favorite expressions of the great art.
Yeah.
Because there is this wiggle room
of
like how fast you play it, where you make your emphasis,
where
your pauses are.
Yeah.
And they're just as important.
Yeah, it's like watching a movie where you're like, oh, they almost cast Mickey Rourke for Death Proof, but then it was Kurt Russell at the last minute, and you're like, that would have been so different. Yeah. Like it just is. Yeah. As soon as the person starts being like, I'm going to perform this, it's, hopefully it's authentically you at that point too, and in a way that does resonate with others.
You might think of art as like truth filtered through individual consciousness. Like you and I doing something about the same truth, like that community is good. Yeah. That's what our art is about, right? That filtered through me will be expressed differently than it would be through you. Yeah. The fractal that emits from me. Yeah.
And if I do one today and tomorrow, it'll be different too. It'll
as you change as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. That's like, I love that about comedy, that they're just watching a person up there with a stool and a microphone, and they're trying to perform like an abstract idea, through like act outs and just rhythm and tone. Like to me, that's just infinitely fascinating, like especially when it's bad. Like it's like that's kind of like, wow, this is way better than a perfect movie. Like this is going horribly. So fascinating.
It's rich in information.
Yeah. And there's so much to be learned about. I think you can almost learn more from, well, I shouldn't say that, but you can learn a lot from things that you're like, I don't like this, like, well, why don't you like it?
It's a feast for the senses. Yeah. Whereas when everything goes well, it's a little boring.
Yeah, you would not, those shows where you get up and the audience is hot and you say a thing and they laugh for a long time and you say the next thing and you just power through, like those feel good and they're good to like get a tape of, but you don't grow. If anything, that's now you're going to be a little too, you're just waiting to get slapped down because you're like, you get that cockiness creeping in now.
It's one thing I really like about comedians is you all have such a taste for the funky in life. It's like you're always looking for the blue cheese wherever you go. Like most people are cool.
I love blue cheese.
Most people are cool with like the mild cheddar.
Yeah.
But like comedians want experiences. They don't care if they're good or they're bad experiences. Yeah. They just seek out some kind of novelty in life. And it's such a hungry way to live. I think it's really interesting. I think it's a powerful way to live. To almost like to seek out the uncomfortable constantly makes you a fucking superhuman.
It really does, because you're like, I got up and it went as bad as it could go, and my worst fear did come true, and I'm still here. Like, it's the most cliche thing to say, but you experience that many ego deaths publicly, and it's like, it does make you more resilient.
It's like, what can kill you at that point?
Yeah.
You've like sacrificed yourself so many times, you realize death isn't important or scary.
Yeah. I'm still scared of real death, but stage death I can handle.
Yeah. Well, like, one's an analog for the other,
Yeah. Yeah. Like stage death is kind of like a metaphor for the real one that's going to get you eventually.
100%.
Yeah. Hell yeah. I don't know. How you feeling?
Good.
We're at an hour 40 minutes. Should we wrap it up?
Amazing. Yeah.
You should come back sometime though.
Sure.
I feel like we could go all day.
Yeah. Easy. I live 3 minutes away. So.
Cool. Yeah, we'll do it.
Go walk here.
Well, Warren, it's nice to meet you.
Dude, it's been a pleasure.
All right.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah.